Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in and checking out the video. Now, this video is going to be talking about some current issues that are happening in the sport of boxing right now, in my opinion. This video was inspired by Danny Garcia's recent comments towards Victor Postal, who was, it looked like they were going to fight each other, those two gentlemen. And Danny Garcia basically made some comments about him, saying that I didn't even know who he was. He didn't fight notable opponents. And this is my big problem today with the sport of boxing. You got too many of these fighters thinking that they're Floyd Mayweathers or Manny Pacquiao's or the huge draws who can call the shots and get whatever fight they want. It doesn't work like that, and it shouldn't, in my opinion. So I'm using Danny Garcia as an example. So he in his last fight fought a guy named Rod Salka, who nobody knew who he was. He was ranked like 77th or something like that, a crazy, way out of the way like ranking. And then you got him making comments about Postal saying he hasn't beaten anybody. Well, did you care who Rod Salka beat? No, you didn't. So that's what I'm like. I don't understand this in the sport of boxing. It's become too much now about money, and these guys think they're promoters as well. You got Adonis Stevenson talking about the Sergey Kovalev fight. He's saying that they got to pay me the money, and Sergey Kovalev has to beat these other fighters that I beat. Things of that nature. Like, I just don't understand it. Boxing has changed so much from the golden era of boxing. It really has. Like this era now, all these guys are all about money, and they don't care about putting on good fights for the fans. And they're just making excuses when a guy deserves a shot at them. Oh, he's got to beat this guy. I heard Robert Guerrero, a guy who I respect as well. He puts on some excellent and entertaining fights, in my opinion. Well, you bring up Keith Thurman with him. Well, Keith Thurman's got to beat this guy. And who is he? Keith Urban, he's saying. Like, think comments like this. Just, that's a fans want to see this fight. What happened to entertaining the boxing fans and building a legacy in the sport of boxing? That seems like a dying thing these days. I mean, you have a few fighters who actually want to fight the best. You got guys, got Keith Thurman's one. A lot of people give Canelo Alvarez heat, but hey, Canelo Alvarez fought some good opposition lately. You can't hate on him for that. And you got a guy like Kovalev. He wants to fight some good fighters as well. So, I mean, there is some fighters around, but just not many. So that's my biggest issue right now. These guys using money and promoters as an excuse all the time is just getting annoying. And we suffer and we lose big fights as boxing fans because of this bullshit. Now, the next guy I'm going to speak about is Al Haymon. Most of you guys know Al Haymon. He's a guy, when a fighter wins a fight, they thank God and then they thank Al Haymon. Now, Al Haymon is a guy who has a lot of power in the sport of boxing. He has a ton of fighters that he's a manager with right now. He manages guys such as Leo Santa Cruz, Keith Thurman. He's also got, who else does he have? He's got so many guys, Amir Khan, Lucas Matisse, Danny Garcia. And those three fighters I mentioned, Adonis Stevenson, Danny Garcia, and Robert Guerrero, all have something in common as well. So my issue with Al Haymon is he puts on these fights that are a joke to the sport of boxing. Like, he's got Jermaine Taylor coming off a long layoff, and he comes in and he just gets a title shot against Sam Solomon on ESPN. And then you have Danny Garcia fighting Rod Salka. I mean, things like of that nature. And that's my problem with Haymon. He puts these fights that are just a joke. Like, you have a really good fighter against a completely overmatched fighter, and you think that that's okay to put on for boxing fans to watch, which is completely unacceptable in my opinion. Now, however, I'm still on the fence with Al Haymon because I've heard about him putting some of his fighters on NBC and signing a deal with NBC. So I think that actually is a very good thing for the sport of boxing. So I'm not 100% against Al Haymon, especially if he gets some fights on NBC and brings boxing back to TV. I think that's going to be a good thing for the sport of boxing. And I definitely could see it happening because Al Haymon advises and manages so many fighters that I definitely think he needs like a venue like NBC Sports to put all his fighters on TV and get them exposure. Now, the next thing I want to talk about that's an issue in the sport of boxing is Bob Arum's comments that he was made a little while back about 90% of fans don't care about undercards on pay-per-views. That is a completely inappropriate comment. Boxing fans deserve better, first of all, and that's why Manny Pacquiao's numbers are going down if you watch his pay-per-views. They put on garbage undercards. You can go to McDonald's late at night and watch better fights than some of the fights Top Rank put on during some of their pay-per-view undercards. So that's complete disrespect to boxing fans. And Bob Arum's got to get with the times. The UFC is competing against boxing. Some of their events are stacked and they put on some good undercards. And I'm not saying that every boxing card has bad undercards. Some of them have great undercards. But I'm just saying that Bob Arum, specifically, if people are paying a lot of money for pay-per-view fights, I want to see some good fights in the undercard. Don't give me some bullshit. I want to see good fights, some big names, and don't rip us off as fans. Now, the next thing in the sport of boxing I want to talk about is judging. Judging has always been a problem in the sport of boxing. CJ Ross, you've seen her lately in the sport of boxing. She's done some excellent decisions, starting with the Timothy Bradley one and Canelo Alvarez draw. So my opinion on these judges is it should be like the Super Bowl in the NFL. You have the best officiating crew working the Super Bowl because they've performed the best throughout the year. That's how I think it should work with boxing judges. They should review their scorecards, and if you're making stupid scorecards, you shouldn't be working big fights. For example, CJ Ross, when she did that Manny Pacquiao card, personally, I would have had her not been working a big fight again anytime soon. I would have suspended her. I would have reviewed her card and suspended her after what she did. Especially after the Canelo Alvarez fight, she should have been suspended. And in my opinion, it should have taken her years to get back on a big card if she even got back on one again. And I just think that you got to start disciplining these judges. It's disgusting. People pay a lot of money to watch fights, and you have completely incompetent judges. So I think you screw up a big fight and they review your scorecard and they say you did wrong. I think you should be off the main cards, the big cards for years. You got to work your way back up to the top. And when you're suspended, I want to see you doing boxing seminars. I want to see you understand the sport of boxing and how it should be scored. And I also think they should consult some fighters that may be able to even come in and speak to judges about proper scoring. Just maybe retired fighters, things of that nature, to make the judging better in the sport of boxing. It's always going to be a problem. But I think if you start rubberman and disciplining these judges, I think it will make a big difference. And last but not least, the sport of boxing, we have too many title belts. I think if you get rid of a lot of the belts, you see good fighters actually fight each other. You're going to see better fights if you get rid of some of the belts. That's just my opinion on it. I think where there's way too many belts in the sport of boxing, I think there needs to be maybe 2 or 3 belts. That's it. I mean, then we can see some great fights. They've got so many different sanctioning bodies. It's crazy. So that's one thing I hope they improve in the sport of boxing, getting rid of all these belts so we can see some better fights. And we can see guys prove they want to be the best in the sport of boxing. And it's very interesting and crazy world today in boxing. You've seen Wilder turn down a payday because he's advised with Al Heyman, a big payday as well. Then you see Peter Quillen vacate his titles. And it really makes me sick because there's so many boxers that there is guys out there still, believe it or not, that really want to prove that they're the best, and they work their ass off to get to that point in their boxing career. And then you got guys turning down all these big money fights, and to me it's just disgusting. It's wrong in the sport of boxing. And those are just my opinions, guys. Let me know what you think are some major issues in the sport of boxing and some recommendations on how we can fix them. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning into the video. I appreciate it. And if you haven't, please subscribe. Thank you very much.